Hello, welcome to David's World episode 6. Today we are doing a quick camera test between the Panasonic Lumix GH2, the Lumix G7, the Lumix G85 and the Canon XC10. For the Lumix cameras we're using an f4 to f5.6 14 to 140mm kit lens. We are also using a 24 to 240mm fixed lens on the XC10. Right, so first up, here's some ungraded footage from the GH2. The GH2 holds up quite well for medium close-up shots, and is quite good despite its 10-year age difference compared to the other cameras. When you get to close-up shots though, you'll notice that in this shot here, you'll see that the detail's not quite there because it's an older sensor. So here is the G7, and as you can see the G7 has a much flatter profile than the GH2, and it also has slightly more definition. So this is a good all-round flat picture profile we've got here on the Lumix G7. The G85 has a slightly more yellowish skin tone compared to the G7. It's slightly more sharper, just straight out of the camera. Again, it's quite a good just all-round image, so it's quite versatile, the G85. Here's the Canon XC10. This is sort of the dark horse out of the four cameras. So this was filmed in CLog, which gives quite a very flat but quite murky profile. But the real difference will be in the colour grade, and you'll see just how amazing this footage will look in the final colour grade. So here's the Canon XC10, some outdoor shots of the Canon XC10. You can just see that the sky looks, the definition in the sky has got really good dynamic range. And here's the Lumix G85, and you can see it doesn't quite have that pop or dynamic range, that same dynamic range as the XC10, but it's still got that quite good definition, and you can see that definition in this shot too. In this shot here you can see that it's slightly softer, but there's definitely more punch with the colours. The colour space is definitely improved with the XC10, and so is the dynamic range. So now we're going to have a quick conclusion and of the ungraded footage. So the GH2 held up quite well for a 10-year-old camera. The standard picture profile was not very flat, it was actually quite saturated compared to the other cameras. The G7 was a good all-round flat profile with higher definition than the GH2. It was slightly soft, just coming out of the camera. The G85, the skin tone was not as pale as the G7, was more yellow, and it was slightly sharper than the G7. And finally the XC10 was the softest 4K image with a slightly murky CLog footage, but with the best dynamic range. Okay, so now we're going to have a look at some graded footage of the GH2, and you can see it holds up pretty well, although as mentioned before it's quite saturated. Here's the G7. It kind of looks a little bit like the GH2 but slightly less saturated and with more definition. Here's the G85, and here's that yellowish warm skin tone that I was talking about before, and it looks slightly sharper than the G7. And here's the XC10, and you can see the footage looks amazing. The colour depth looks so natural, and you can see that in this shot as well, especially with looking at the trees and the shrubs in the background, just how amazing that colour depth looks in the sky as well. And here's the Lumix G85, and you can see it almost looks as good, but the colour depth is not quite there, but it's again got good definition. So here's the Canon XC10, another shot in the outdoor patio area, and you can see it's got that lovely colour depth to it. And whereas the G85 doesn't have that colour depth, but it does the same colour depth, but it does make up for it in resolution. So finally, to conclude, I thought we would talk about some of the winners in this competition with the graded footage. So the winner goes to the XC10, which has the camera with the most film-like image, the best dynamic range, and the most natural looking colours. The G7 and the G85 were equal. They had very pleasing results. there was more definition than the XC10, but there was less dynamic range with these cameras. The G7 also had a different colour temperature or flatter skin tone in this test compared to the G85, and as mentioned, the G85 was slightly sharper. The GH2 did surprisingly well in the colour tests, and but was much more saturated than the other cameras, and of course didn't hold up as well in the close-ups because it's got an older sensor. So that's pretty much my review of these 4 cameras. So we hope you've enjoyed watching this show, and we look forward to seeing you next time on David's World. Hi there, welcome back to David's World. Just yesterday when I was doing the camera tests, the lighting was changing quite a bit because it was quite a overcast, semi-stormy day outside. So it meant that the G7 and the G85 shots, that there was a little bit of a change in the colour temperature because of the change in the weather outside affecting the shots. So I've actually reshot the G7 and the G85 footage, and as you can see just by looking at them, that in actual fact they're both remarkably similar. You can't really tell the difference between these 2 cameras at all. So I just wanted to offer that up as a little appendix, that the G7 and the G85 are practically the same image quality. Great. Okay, well look, thanks for watching David's World, and we'll see you next time.